Hello and welcome to a very special episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Joey Chester, assignment editor here at the Western Journal. We have a very, very special episode for you today. I'm joined by Representative Mark Finchem. He is also a Trump-backed candidate for Secretary of State in Arizona. Yes. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Abby Liebing. We are so excited. Thank you so much for coming in today to see us. We're just so excited about what you're working on for Arizona and the country. It's really important topics. Can you tell us about some of the events you have coming up?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
So let's see. The things that I'm participating in, we've got the Clay Clark Reawaken America Tour, which is going to be in Phoenix Friday and Saturday. I'll be speaking at that on election integrity, which is a big topic within the faith community. Then, of course, Saturday afternoon, President Trump will be here, and I've been afforded the honor of being one of the openers. So
that's incredible.
At least I don't have to follow the guy, right? That'd be tough. Then on January 28th through the 29th, we have an event that we're putting together with Women Fighting for America. That is, the name of the event itself is We Stand America. It deals with, the narrative right now is all national security. Okay, that's a federal responsibility.
Yeah.
What about domestic security? Nobody talks about domestic security. I mean, in the sense that we're talking about it. That's state and local governments. That's the sheriffs, the chiefs of police, the state DPS, the governors, the legislators, the county commissioners, those folks. So when it comes to trying to manage a state, you have to take ownership of the elections. Now, elections belong to the people. They don't belong to the government.
Right.
If that's the case, then when you get jokers like this Clyburn guy out of South Carolina, wants to federalize the elections. We can't trust the people with their elections. Think about what that idiot just said, okay? There's this thing called the Ninth Amendment. The rights of the people can't be disparaged. There's this thing called the 10th Amendment. All those powers not enumerated for the federal government are left to the states or to the people.
That's exactly right.
So if you don't have operational control of your border, which we don't have in Arizona or in Texas, we're told we do, but quite frankly, Mayorkas is nothing but a liar. And his boss is nothing but a liar. Right. Okay? We do not have a closed border. We have a border where people are pouring across our border. Drugs are pouring into this country. Individuals who have no regard for life, who carry out crimes against persons, I mean, you look at the statistics and they're off the charts. We had a press release, or a press conference earlier today with Ken Cuccinelli and some of the members of the House that we're calling on the governor of this state, of Arizona, to exercise his purview under the National Guard, his authority as Commander-in-Chief of the State National Guard, to exercise that authority to resist an invasion. We can do that when the federal government refuses to act.
Right.
So, but more importantly, the event in McAllen, Texas, which is coming up the 28th and 29th, is We Stand America. And we are going to engage in a border tour. The following day, that's on the 29th. On the 28th, 28th is the border tour. On the 29th, Saturday, we're going to have a day-long skull session with people like General Flynn, Tom Homan, Admiral Chuck Kubik, Ann Vandersteel, a lady by the name of Karen Kingston. We've also got Sam Sorbo. Individuals who are going to examine 5 pillars of how do we support a democratically elected but constitutional Republican form of government, okay? But this is going to be different. Not only are we going to deliver content around, these are the things that are broken. These are the things that could be done to repair them. And by the way, you're not leaving here without a to-do list.
I like that.
Okay? So my vast majority of my life, as long as I can remember, I've always been that guy who lives by the rule, make a list, prioritize, and execute. Okay? So if we've got a list of things that are broken, a list of things that need to be done, great, make the list, and then try and reorganize that list to what's the most important. Sometimes it's what's the low-hanging fruit that you can solve a whole bunch of other problems with. And then the big part is execute. So what we plan to do with folks who are going to be attending this is for Saturday's part of the event. They're going to get a 14-step plan that's broken out into 7 weeks, 2 things a week. At the end of 7 weeks, you'll be able to speak directly to your county supervisors, your county commissioners, your legislators, your governor, and say, this is the law that we want you to pass. Now imagine if you have 500 people showing up at the Capitol, all speaking with one voice. That's why we're calling it We Stand America, okay? When you have 17 states that have already looked at adopting the language for the ballot fraud countermeasures program, which, by the way, I can give you a brief on that. But when you have 17 states out of 26 that have already stepped up and said, we want to do this, you find 9 more, now you have 26. You have majority of states. How cool is that?
Very cool.
So you're now creating, I think, a cause of action for the 26 who have passed things like an audit trail, watermarks on the ballots, a QR code on the ballot so that you, the voter, can scan that code, get the number for it, and then after the polls have closed, go out through a third-party user interface and see an image of your ballot. You can't do that today.
No.
You also will be able to verify that that is the way you voted and that somebody hasn't substituted your ballot in the system or swapped it out or somehow trashed it. So, that's one thing that we're going to be promoting, but it's a call to action, and it's more than just a call to action. It's giving people actionable things they can do so that when they go home, they can do them. Now, the follow-up to that is, within 10 days, we plan to have somebody call them and come alongside them and say, hey, how are you coming on that list? All right? They're going to be motivated, because right now what we're seeing is a very angry polity. Very angry public. Okay, anger without an outlet is wasted. So how about we take that anger and focus it on justice? That's the other word I'm hearing a lot about. People feel that they've been denied justice with the 2020 election. So if we're able to get out in front of that and say, okay, you've got your anger, let's focus, and let's give you an action item. That is an unstoppable force. And if we're able to do that city by city, for every 5,000 people that we run through this kind of an event, that touches 50,000 people. Because the average person has got a circle of friends of about 10 people. And if they're excited, they're energized, they're empowered, and they're ready to go, they're engaged, you make differences that way.
It's game changing.
Yeah.
So what has the response been so far to We Stand America? Because, your first event is in McAllen, 28th, 29th. So what are you seeing so far in the lead up as far as response?
Well, we're getting a lot of activity, a lot of chatter with the media.
Okay.
And at some point that's going to convert into ticket sales. Now, it's an inexpensive ticket. It's like $10, $15, okay? Now, there are higher price tickets. If you want to go on the border tour, that's $2,500 because we have to bring in, we're going someplace where you need to have security, armed security, okay? There's also some perks that go with it, a nice dinner, and these are donors who are essentially helping fund the lower price ticketing. And then, of course, there's other price breaks, 125 and I think 225, maybe 99. I haven't looked at the site lately because we have adjusted the pricing a little bit. But the value add for each one of those price points is you get a little bit more. Now, we also have some corporate sponsorships. I think they're at $20,000, a table of 8 for 20 grand, and they're added to the tour. These are for people who would really like to kind of cut through the noise of what they hear in the media and see what's really going on. Let me see with my own eyes, because he who sees with his own eyes is, I think Zig Ziglar said, a man who convinces himself, that's what he'll believe. So.
What are you doing? So the Arizona legislative session just started this week, correct?
Yes, sir.
What are you planning on doing, or what have you done at the legislative level to work on election integrity and border security?
Well, let's see. November 30th last year, I chaired a ad hoc committee, which means a committee off-site, not officially sanctioned by the legislature. That committee of a total of 9 of us heard testimony, took evidence, and we created probable cause for the Senate 14 days later to issue subpoenas. And that is what is now known as the Maricopa County audit.
Yeah.
On December 13th, just passed, we held a second public hearing on election integrity, where Pima County residents and evidence was accepted. In fact, they're still doing some of the canvas work. We found substantial irregularities to the point where I think there's a strong likelihood that that election should also be classified as irredeemably compromised and should be set aside. Now, we don't have all the proof yet because we're still doing some of the canvassing. And then, of course, we've got Yuma County that's got some issues with people going back and forth between a polling center and a 501, the building for a 501c3. You know, I think 501c3s are not supposed to engage in electioneering. Yeah. So it's my understanding they've got some affidavits and probably some indictments maybe at some point. But, you know, when you're looking at something that appears to be a racketeering case, and I mean, when you've got 3 different counties and you've got different levels and then you've got an interaction going on between various states, the potential for a racketeering case is there. And with the actors that we have seen, like, you know, Stacey Abrams and some of these people who just don't give a whit about nullification of somebody's vote, they're perfectly happy to inject an illegal vote, an illegitimate vote, and to cancel out a legitimate vote as long as they can stay in power. That's what this is about. It's a fight over power.
Sure.
So my follow-up question to all of that, you know, as you're working legislatively on election integrity, I know you're more than aware of a lot of the media backlash that you've gotten. You know, people saying that you know, there's not evidence, it's not credible, or people just saying, move on from 2020, let's focus on the future. So what is kind of your responses to a lot of that backlash?
Well, if you don't fix what happened in the past, how are you going to rely on the future? I think that's a straw man argument that people want to. Human beings have this interesting behavior. Excuse me, I had some nasal surgery yesterday.
No,
so
you're
I got
fine.
little sniffles going
You
on.
sound
here.
great.
It's okay.
Human beings have this very interesting activity that they engage in. They avoid things that are painful. Okay, and I've received some of the most despicable mail saying you're a traitor. You know, you destroyed this election. You've destroyed the people's faith in the election. Okay, let me stop a second. That train left the station a long time ago. People have known that there's been something wrong with certain elections around this state in some of our counties for a very long time. A very long time. All the way back to when I moved here in 1999, there was a huge question about an election in Pima County where they tried to pass a regional transit authority. It passed, but everybody's looking at each other like, how'd that pass? Because everybody says they voted against it. Okay? So it's the question of, going back to the original premise, elections belong to the people, they don't belong to the government. And when the government is telling you, hey, this is, you know, perhaps the only way we're going to be able to get this done, you're going to have to rely on us. Something's not right. Okay? So think about this for a moment. You have what used to be done by people, and I've dropped a bill, or introduced a bill, that calls for paper ballots and hand counting. Can't rely on electronic tabulation as the primary means of counting votes.
Sure.
Okay, so I think the electronic tabulation, quite frankly, is a solution in search of a problem. Because what we've done is we've taken the people out of the process, replaced it with electronics, which means we no longer have transparency. We have to rely on a machine that, by the way, in the Senate hearing, when the evidence was presented, they admitted that they did not have superior access to the highest level of the electronic tabulation equipment. So that means that Dominion actually operated the election, not the county.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That's called total lack of transparency,
Right.
total inability to verify. So you've got some issues there that you can't get past them. That means when we find those kinds of irregularities to the numbers, just keep in mind, and I think Peter Navarro coined this phrase, when the margin of error exceeds the margin of victory, that's irredeemably flawed. Okay? So what that statement means is you're not taking votes away from one person and giving them to another. What you're doing is you're decertifying the election. You're reclaiming the electors because you can't declare a winner. Mm-hmm. Okay? This isn't about whether or not Joe Biden got him or Donald Trump got him. It's about whether or not the people's voice actually was properly and accurately represented.
Right.
And you can't say that. Now, Stephen Richards is going to go out there and say, oh, these are all lies. Really? We've proven the case. How about you prove that it wasn't? Mm-hmm. There's one for you.
Yeah.
By the way, he's the Maricopa County recorder. So the whole point of the McAllen, Texas event, and if folks want to go out and buy a ticket, we highly recommend that you do this. Okay, for the price of this ticket, $15, and the people that you're going to see that you get to hear, this is the best show in the country.
I want to go out there.
It's WeStandAmerica.com. WeStandAmerica.com. And you can go through all of the speakers. You can see the various pricing packages. We need to put at least 5,000 butts in seats. Mm-hmm. And there's a little rumor out there that if we do that, a certain guy just might pay a visit.
Really? Ah.
Just saying.
Rumor.
So we've actually
exciting.
switched venues. We've gone from a 5,000 person venue to a 7,000 person venue. I mean, McAllen, Texas isn't all that big.
No, it's not.
So I think we got the largest venue we could possibly get.
Amazing.
And now we're off and running. We've got some pretty serious players in the flag officer world. I mean, we're talking about generals and admirals retired.
Yeah.
And this is, by the way, for everything that we take in, 10%, we've established a fund, 10% of that is going to go to military members who are being forced out of the military because they refuse to take the jab.
Wow.
Keep in mind, these people who signed a blank check for their lives to save this country, you got some idiot forcing them to take a poison into their body against everything that is cherished and dear in our Constitution. Mm-hmm. And they're being dishonorably or generally discharged, which means they're stripped of their benefits. Why? Because some sawed-off little bureaucrat who can't get his story straight, Anthony Fauci, is going to buffalo everybody into believing that, oh, you won't get sick if you take this.
That's the big lie.
Newsflash there, Tony. It's not true.
No.
And that's one of the things that we're going to be addressing in McAllen as well, is the freedom, our medical freedoms are a civil right. So we're going to be talking about suffrage. We're going to be talking about what happens when people get across the border and they're here. That is a domestic security issue. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about biblical citizenship. We're going to be talking about education, critical race theory. Mm-hmm. All of these things go into the underpinning of what? The maintenance of our domestic security. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have secure elections that represent the true will of the people, if they're compromised by power brokers, that's not an election, that's a selection. Mm-hmm. That means that you have got somebody who's already pre-selected what's going to happen there. So that's the importance of the WeStandAmerica.com tour, well, this event.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, we'll have a worship service in, I forget the name of the town, but it's a huge park in McAllen, just outside of McAllen. And then we're going to go to the border, and we're going to lock arms, and we're going to pray over the border.
Wow.
And we are going to let people see firsthand that Americans are standing together, regardless of political party, regardless of political persuasion. We are standing together as Americans, and we are calling out these cartels that are importing poison onto our streets. Our fentanyl deaths are off the charts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's on Joe Biden's hands, okay? We've got children who are being forced into rape rings. Mm. We've got NGOs, faith groups, believe it or not, and they'll be named at the event, who are pulling kids across the border, and we've got cartels who are pushing them across the border in order to feed this power broker game where the non-government organizations, these organizations that are faith-based, are getting billions of taxpayer dollars to import children for what? Think about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. For illegal stuff.
We have got a very sick society that permits that to go on. We're simply saying we're not going to stand for it anymore.
So what do you think Biden's incentive is to let this border crisis rage? What do you think he
Oh, it's all
gets out
about
of
power.
it? It's all about power?
It's all about power.
Yeah.
He's speaking to a Marxist base
Yeah.
that wants to be a Venezuela. They want the worst way to be a Venezuela. Because why?
Look at the grocery stores.
Okay, so let's go back to the Hamiltonian version of America. A national government with consolidated power. Okay? The Jeffersonian version is a state government with distributed power. The two are diametrically opposed. All right? Well, the Marxists love Hamilton because the fewer people who are at the top with power, the happier they are because they're in the power club. Everybody else, it's like, no. You are not going to be permitted to eat sugar. You are not going to be able to vote. You are not going to be able to vape or whatever they call it. They're going to control your life because they can live your life so much better than you can. Well, we're calling people out for that. You know, this is each individual in this country has a personal franchise. The vote is suffrage, universal suffrage. Every one of us has a vote, okay?
Yeah.
And when a legitimate vote is nullified by an illegitimate voter, that is the denial of universal suffrage. And that is one of the things that we are taking on head on with this We Stand America event. Now, you referenced the tour. That is one event that will be under the larger umbrella of the Take Action Tour. So takeactiontour.us. Right now that URL is aimed at the one event that we're promoting. But this is going to be similar to the events that we want to hold in 26 states. And yes, we're going to kind of go in a big circle. We'll be in Texas first and then go over to Louisiana and probably Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, on up the eastern seaboard. The intention is to go to Atlanta. Marty Harbin in Atlanta is one of the guys carrying the Arizona bill for the broad ballot fraud countermeasures bill for the folks in Georgia. Then we'll go to South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Gettysburg, Nashville, Columbus, Toledo, just kind of down through. We're going to just meander on for 26 states.
Yeah.
And then that's phase two, okay? And then many of us will have to come home and campaign for this next election. Now,
Right.
we got to wrap that up in June. Campaign goes from June until November when we finally sort this out. After that, phase three starts. And that is where we hit all 48 states and see to it that every voter has the opportunity to have full transparency, full spectrum transparency, from the printing of the ballot paper all the way to the counting of the vote. And if you don't have that, I mean, in elections, the vote should be very private. But the counting of the vote can't be. It's got to be very public. And that's what we're trying, that's what we're aiming at. And that's one of the things that I guess have become the national spokesman for stuff like this. Like, why wouldn't you want to have this? You don't want some joker that's not qualified to be, who didn't really win an election. You don't want him in that seat, do you? Really?
Yeah. Backtracking just a little bit, we're hearing all that you're doing about election integrity, but also bringing in the border crisis to that. As a representative that you are, what are you doing to start addressing that issue? Obviously, the situation's very bad.
Right.
So what are specific measures that you're taking right now?
Well, we've encouraged the governor to act under some specific powers. Ken Cuccinelli spoke to that earlier today. Specific powers that are retained in the United States Constitution for the states. We have, for I think the third year in a row, we have a record surplus. It's not like we don't have the money. In fact, the governor talked about $1 billion he wants to throw at infrastructure, roads and bridges and highways. If we don't have a secure border, if we don't have, maybe a better way to say it is, if we don't have operational control over the interior of our border, we don't have a country. We have people who are coming into this country from active nation states who have declared war on us. Iran, Yemen. I mean, we had December 13th, I think it was. Yemenis terrorist, identified, comes across the border wearing a New York EMS uniform.
We covered that.
Yeah.
I know you did. That's where I saw the story.
From Uzbekistan. I was talking to the Yuma sheriff the other week.
Yeah. Okay,
very
so
scary.
these are people who hate us, who have declared war on us. And now we've got an administration in office that is just open the doors. It's like the welcome wagon. It's like, come on in. Oh, we're just going to love you into loving us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Nancy Pelosi calls MS-13, oh, they're just underprivileged children. Yeah, Nancy, they're underprivileged children. They gut you like a fish if you looked at them wrong.
Mm. So what is the number one thing that needs to be done?
Number one, we need to beef up our sheriffs and their ability to hire. Now, you know, the media has done such a grand job, present company excluded, has done such a grand job of vilifying the law enforcement community. You know, I'm 21 years a DPS officer in West Michigan. I couldn't do the job today the way I did the job when I retired in 1999.
Yeah.
Right.
I couldn't do it. I watch what these young men and women are going through, and it does not surprise me that we have a problem with recruiting. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to push back against organizations, you know, for example, the Phoenix City Council. They want to turn get this drives me nuts. They want to turn their elected responsibility of oversight of the police department over to a unelected, unaccountable board. No, they say, well, they'll be accountable to. No, that's your job. Because they don't want to take the heat if they have a police officer who's involved in an unjust shooting. Well, if you don't want to take the heat, get out of the office.
Yeah.
That's what you
Shouldn't be
signed up
elected.
for.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think that, you know, to answer your question squarely on what do we need on the border, funding. There's actually a proof of concept that I've been advocating with a couple of other legislators, Senator Borelli and Representative Biasucci, that provides overwatch. I mean, we're talking about extremely high definition drones that are able to view somebody coming across the border, tag them, and track them. Today, the program is they come across the border, they trip a camera, and then you have a team that goes out and tries to find them. They got to crawl over rock piles, they got to go up mountains, they got to go down into ravines, they got to walk through the pucker brush. Time out. It's time to work smarter, not harder. So this outfit, I think the name of it, Global Engine Solutions, came in with a number of different things, you know, everything from retired law enforcement and military personnel to act as backup to police officers or to law enforcement agencies. Don't really need to have that at this point. We're trying to get the proof of concept across the finish line. And that is where they have a drone team that's protected, you know, because they're operating drones, they're not looking out for their own safety, so they've got a protection team around them. When they have a trip on the border, that drone is able to tag that individual and track them everywhere they go. Okay, so
We need that.
Why not deploy your resource to intercept that individual on flat ground where you don't have to crawl over a ravine, you don't have to go up a mountain, you just wait for them to come to the road.
It's smart.
It's like, hey, fellas, welcome to America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a ride for you. We got 3 hots
Welcome
in a cot.
party.
But, let me take that backpack for you. It's got to be heavy by now. Okay, so that's the program that we're advocating. You know, there's some people talking about, well, we need to deploy the National Guard. We needed to. I find it interesting after being in the legislature now for 7 years, going on 8. I'm in my last year. The default for the bureaucracy is always to turn to more government.
For sure.
How about we just take a step back, a deep breath, and ask the question, is there a different way to do this that is more cost effective? So, and the reason I ask that question is, if you can deploy the same resources over a broader area, why wouldn't you do that? It's all about working smarter, not harder, especially when you're able to go from a 35, 36, 37% apprehension rate, which some people say is high, to 100% apprehension. I mean, you come across our border carrying a backpack full of dope, we're arresting you, we are taking everything you have, including your clothing, we'll put you in a pretty little orange jumpsuit, and we're getting rid of you. You can go back and tell the cartels you got caught. Because sooner or later, if we have think about this, if we have a 100% apprehension rate, the cartels are not going to be able to absorb that loss in their cash flow for very long. That means they're going to have to find a different place to go to ply their trade. perhaps California, perhaps New Mexico. But those are all, I mean, New Mexico that's tough terrain to get across. So they're not going to go to New Mexico. They're going to go to California. They're going to try and go to Texas. And right now, that's one of the reasons we're going to McAllen. That is the gateway right now for child trafficking, for human slavery, and for all those people that, want to yammer on, the Democrats that want to yammer on about, you want to return to Jim Crow. Hey, what you're doing right now is putting people into slavery. What you're doing right now is putting people into slavery in one way or another. You're also allowing poison to come into our schools and our streets. How do you justify that? You can't. And McAllen right now is the focal point for a lot of that stuff coming in. That's why we chose that particular area. That's why we have really focused some resources on trying to shut that down. But it's going to take people getting involved. And that's why we're appealing to people, come to McAllen. It's cheap. You get a hotel room, you can drive, you can get a hotel room, you come for a day and a half of boot camp, really, to become that citizen activist who's going to step up and say, I want to protect my country, but I'm not a police officer and I'm not a soldier. What can I do? Okay. Keep in mind, our military is less than 1% of our population. That means 99% of the population could step up and do something to secure their nation. And I think that's what the tour is all about. That's what this McAllen event is all about. So as we build this out, we're still working on the underwriting and immediate funding for that project. I mean, it's not cheap. It's well over $3 million to run that. But that's only phase one. And as people awaken out of this long time slumber that they, everything's okay. Oh, it'll be better next election. I'm here to tell you, it's not going to be better next election. Elections are hard work. They require maintenance because there's always going to be somebody who wants to steal your franchise, your suffrage. We got to shut them down. And it's going to take a while for us to, it's kind of like a water tap that's all the way open. It's going to take a while to turn that handle and shut down the flow.
For sure. Well, it looks like we are out of time. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on with us today. This was fantastic. Some great information. One thing I always tell people on the show is the biggest thing you can do is get involved. I mean, that's so important. So if you're interested in attending that event, please do. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support us having guests on, like Representative Mark Finchem, go to westernjournal.com/join so you can support the Western Journal further. We thank you so much for that. And
it's a great publication.
See?
Help us do more of this.
Help us do more of this, please, so we don't have to be throttled by big tech tyrants. And with that, we will see you back here on Friday. Thank you so much for watching.